What is going on, guys? Welcome back. Commentary for you. If you didn't watch the video before this, I talk about the leak with franchise mode. A little disappointing. This video, though, I gotta say, I'm a little bit optimistic. There's some really good things here, but there's also some pretty big questions. The question, of course, is what is the yard? I'm hoping it's more of a flag football, a novice approach to the game, something not as arcade-based as Superstar KO mode. I think that mode was a real novelty. I'd like to see EA put in kind of a low-key flag football, something along those lines, where you just can go on with your friends, 7-on-7 even, and just have a little bit of fun and not worry too much about the game. So we'll see what actually comes of the yard, but it does appear at least a new game mode is in the works for Madden 21. Now, I want to talk about another positive, because this is something we've constantly talked about, and it's uniform degradation. So obviously you can see here from the arms to the legs, the pants, the socks, everything appears to have degradation on it. I know it is a small thing, but I went back and played a little bit of Madden 25, and to see where jersey degradation has went from then until now, where it's near obsolete, it's these little details that you don't always notice are there that help immerse you in the game, but when they're not there, you realize how much they take away from the experience. When it's weather games, which EA needs to revamp, by the way, as far as getting you a heavy snow, heavy rain, those are options that have went away. I do like to see the degradation of the jerseys in the game. Now, finally, and maybe one of the bigger things here is trying to discern whether this is a real image or not. Clearly, this is a Minnesota Timberwolves themed football uniform. Something does not look right to me about the helmet, especially when you look at the reflection. However, it is pretty clear to see the uniforms in the background on the sidelines share this same imagery. So the reason I have some hopes about this is, obviously, we all know a lot of sports in general are struggling at the moment. So if Madden could take and find a way to involve other sports, be it basketball, hockey, whatever the case, and integrate them into their game, I think that would be a huge step for all gamers. Now, I understand you can't have a basketball or a hockey game played out in this theme, but I do feel like you should give gamers a chance to represent their favorite teams, even though they may not be in the NFL, and of course, they may not even be playing right now. In the past, that's been a giant licensing issue for EA. And although it's not something they can just go out and do, it would be a fairly decent goodwill gesture if they started to work toward these. And if they can't do that, then I'm hoping this may be the opening of a custom uniform or a created uniform if possible. That seems a bit unrealistic given the fact that that's a pretty detailed logo, and if someone's working within the confines of a beta, that's an awful lot of time to put into something when they really have no rhyme or reason to continue with it. If you're not familiar, anytime you participate in the beta, you essentially don't get to keep what you've bought in terms of your MUT packs, or what you've accomplished or achieved in terms of game modes. At least that's always been my history, even with EA, when they come into a beta. They basically tell you, hey, listen, don't do these things, or you can do them, just understand you're not going to get to keep them. So for what that's worth, I feel like there are some good things here. New game mode, worked in terms of depth for the jerseys, and then obviously remaining to be seen what they're doing with this. And I guess it brings up an interesting question if this ties into the yard. You would think that it wouldn't, because clearly this is a stadium aspect, but as a gamer, what are your expectations for this? Do you feel like if we're not going to get, as I mentioned in the franchise video before, the in-depth experience we want from Madden, are you okay with getting more passive game modes where you have a game you can just load up 15, 20 minutes, play for fun, play as an NBA team, play as an NHL team, however you wanted to go about it? I also want to bring up an interesting point about, and I'll probably do a full video on this, the concept of two separate games, where essentially as gamers, we understand that perhaps EA can't fit what we want in a franchise mode into Madden 21, Madden 22, and the availability of going back to, say, maybe a game like Head Coach that could then later tie into Madden indirectly through data transfer on your, either over, the cloud or through you directly on your console. I feel like that would probably be the best way to approach EA about a franchise, because it does seem, no matter which way we want to look at it, these images, the yard, tend to be pushing themselves away from franchise mode. We've talked about in the past, financially, it benefits EA to push you into microtransaction game modes. They're making, almost $1.5 billion. So that's essentially where they see gamers not just spending time, but money. So why not continue to have them build Madden in this way, which, I hate to say it, not that they aren't improvements, but I don't really recall anyone technically asking for the yard. Perhaps they could have, we just don't have enough clear information. Would you be okay with purchasing an addition to Madden 20, if not a completely separate game that focused solely on franchise? Because I think we've learned through EA, monetization of game modes is really the only thing that pushes them to create more and new content. And at this point, if they were going to sell you a standalone product that you wouldn't need to have Madden with, that was, say, half the price, and would continually update itself throughout the season, then maybe we wouldn't get to this point where you've got, franchise gamers and simulation football community members sitting here and having to talk about jersey degradation and how important it is to a game, the yard and what it could possibly be, and, oh, by the way, we're also apparently adding in new jerseys or custom jerseys. I think it's something that I've thought a lot about, especially given, the nature of the community and where the community is right now as far as pushing back against EA for not getting the game that we want. What if we just gave in and said, listen, EA, you're not going to build the game we want into Madden 20 or Madden 21 or Madden 22. Why not just build it separately, and we'd be willing to pay for a standalone product? And then once that product starts to sell, you may see a whole contingent of gamers who don't even buy Madden because they're buying Head Coach. That way you kind of get the best of both worlds. You have the community members that sit here and say, the only way this is going to work is to not buy Madden. You have other people like myself that say, really, the only way this is going to work is to not buy into microtransactions. And in this case, you would literally get them almost going hand in hand, where because you're buying a Head Coach-esque product, you're still giving EA money up front. You're not put into a position immediately where microtransactions in the form of packs are, and if they have their own dedicated team toward that, we would hope they would come out, lay inroads with the community, and begin to build a game around what we want. Once they've established that next generation console power, perhaps they could just bring them together at some point, or start to find ways to bring those two games together. I'll tell you right now, this is probably going to upset quite a bit of people. If they would sell us a Head Coach game for a far diminished price than full price of Madden, and later, once we've built that team, we had the ability to import it as far as team, playbooks, draft classes, everything from that environment over into Madden, and Madden's gameplay has gotten to a point where I feel like it can comfortably simulate football at a high percentage, I don't have any problem paying $5, $6, maybe even $10 to take what I've built and the time I've invested into a Head Coach game and carry it over into Madden, where I can then play with that team and have that gameplay match what I've built in Head Coach. That, to me, would be a big step in the right direction. And it also helps EA better understand that, listen, you don't have to deal with all our negativity, because it's going to hurt their sales at some point this year when you've got something trending about this game in a negative fashion, and then you're also coming out and selling us these things that don't technically speak to the gamers that are the most upset. the squeaky wheel gets the grease, so to speak. We are the squeaky wheel right now, and by putting things out like this, they're not doing much to appease us. So with that said, again, positives to talk about. A lot of feedback I'd like to hear from you guys about the head coach idea, whether you would pay for it separately, pay for it to port to Madden, and obviously what you think about these images here. With that said, I know it's been a long video, but I appreciate you sticking through it, and you know I will be back in the week with more commentary.